I still remember the day I hit rock bottom. I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at a reflection I barely recognized. My weight had ballooned to an all-time high, and my self-esteem was at an all-time low. I was 30 years old, and my life was a constant struggle. I was working multiple jobs just to make ends meet, but I still found myself drowning in debt. The financial insecurity was suffocating me, and I felt like I was losing control. As I gazed into that mirror, something inside of me snapped. I realized that I had been living in a state of denial, pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I was fed up with the excuses, fed up with the blame game, and fed up with feeling like a victim. In that moment, I knew I had to take control of my reality. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined to make a change. I started by confronting the harsh truths about my life. I was overweight, broke, and stuck in a rut. But instead of beating myself up over it, I decided to use those truths as fuel for transformation. I began to see my reality as a canvas, waiting to be rewritten. That was the turning point for me. It was the moment when I decided to stop making excuses and start making changes. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to face it head-on. I was ready to take control of my reality and create the life I truly desired. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an incredible journey that would lead me to discover the Millionaire Fat method, a secret that would change my life forever. I still remember the day I stumbled upon the concept that would change my life forever. After hitting rock bottom, I had been searching for any possible way to turn my reality around. I spent countless hours reading self-help books, attending seminars, and scouring the internet for some magical formula to success. But nothing seemed to stick. It was as if I was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. One day, while browsing through a used bookstore, I stumbled upon a tattered old book with a peculiar title, The Art of Turning Weaknesses into Strengths. The cover was worn and faded, but something about the title resonated with me. I purchased the book and took it home, devouring its contents in a single night. As I read through the pages, I began to realize that I had been approaching my problems from the wrong angle. Instead of trying to fix my weaknesses, I could use them to my advantage. It was a revolutionary concept that went against everything I had been taught. The more I read, the more I became obsessed with the idea. I started to apply the principles to my own life, experimenting with different techniques and strategies. And that's when it hit me, the Millionaire Fat method was born. The concept was simple yet profound. What if I could take my perceived weaknesses and turn them into strengths? What if I could use my flaws to create a unique advantage in the world? The more I thought about it, the more I became convinced that this was the key to unlocking my true potential. I spent the next few weeks refining the concept, testing its limits and pushing its boundaries. And what I discovered was nothing short of amazing. The Millionaire Fat method was not just a clever trick, it was a way of life. As I started to apply the principles to my daily routine, I began to notice a shift. I felt more confident, more empowered, and more in control of my destiny. It was as if I had unlocked a secret code, one that gave me access to a world of limitless possibilities. I was excited to see where this new journey would take me. Little did I know, the results would be more astonishing than I could have ever imagined. I still remember the day I stepped on the scale and saw a number that made my heart sink. I had always struggled with my weight, but this was different. This was the heaviest I had ever been. The weight was taking a toll on my physical health, but it was also affecting my mental well-being. I felt like I was living in a constant state of self-doubt, always wondering what others thought of me, always assuming the worst. I decided that I had to make a change. I started by making small adjustments to my daily routine. I began by taking short walks around my neighborhood, trying to get in some exercise without feeling overwhelmed. I also started paying closer attention to what I was eating, trying to cut back on the junk food and sugary snacks that had become a staple of my diet. But it wasn't just about the physical changes. I also knew that I had to work on my mental game. I started reading self-help books, listening to motivational podcasts, and talking to friends and family members who had gone through similar struggles. I realized that I wasn't alone, that there were others out there who understood what I was going through. As I continued to work on myself, I started to notice a shift in my reality. I felt more confident, more capable. I started to see the world in a different light, to realize that there were possibilities out there that I had never considered before. The Millionaire Fat method was working, and I was starting to reap the benefits. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still days when I felt like giving up, when the self-doubt and fear crept back in. There were still moments when I felt like I was stuck in a rut, like I was never going to reach my goals. That's when I met Sarah, a friend who had gone through a similar transformation. She listened to my struggles, offered words of encouragement, and reminded me that I was capable of overcoming anything. With her support, I started to refine the Millionaire Fat method, incorporating lessons I had learned from my experiences. I started to see that the method wasn't just about losing weight, it was about gaining confidence. It was about believing in myself, even when no one else did. It was about taking control of my life and creating the reality I wanted. As I continued on my journey, I started to notice that others were taking notice. People were commenting on my weight loss, asking me for advice, and seeking my help. I realized that I had become a source of inspiration for others, and that feeling was indescribable. But with the newfound attention came a price. There were those who were jealous of my success, who sought to tear me down and undermine my confidence. They said I was lucky, that I had somehow cheated my way to success. They said that I would never be able to maintain the weight loss, that I would eventually balloon back up to my old size. But I knew better. I knew that the Millionaire Fat method was real, that it had worked for me, and that it could work for others. I knew that I had put in the hard work, and that I had earned every ounce of success that came my way. And that's when it hit me, the realization that I was not just fighting for myself, but for others as well. I was fighting to prove that anyone could achieve their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed. I was fighting to show that the Millionaire Fat method was more than just a weight loss plan. It was a way of life. As I looked in the mirror, I saw a person I barely recognized. The weight was gone, but it was more than that. I saw a person who was confident, capable, and strong. I saw a person who had taken control of their life and was living the reality they wanted. I still remember the day my video went viral, and my inbox was flooded with messages. I was thrilled to see my name popping up everywhere, but little did I know that with fame comes a whole lot of criticism. People began questioning my methods, calling me crazy and delusional for thinking I could make a fortune by embracing my reality. At first, the negative comments stung. I took them personally, and it felt like my entire world was crashing down. I began to doubt myself, wondering if all those people were right. Maybe I was just a fool, thinking I could defy the conventional norms and make a success of myself. But as I delved deeper into the comments section, I realized that most of these people weren't even trying to understand my perspective. They were simply hating for the sake of hating. And that's when it hit me, these people weren't my target audience. They weren't the ones who were going to help me achieve my goals. So I developed a thick skin and learned to ignore the hate. I focused on engaging with the people who were genuinely interested in my story, who wanted to learn from me and be inspired by my journey. And you know what? It worked. I also learned a few strategies to deal with the negative feedback. I started by not taking it personally. I reminded myself that people's opinions are often a reflection of their own insecurities and biases. I also made a conscious effort to surround myself with positive influences, people who uplifted and supported me. But the most important thing I did was develop emotional resilience. I learned to recognize when I was feeling down or anxious, and I took steps to mitigate those feelings. I practiced mindfulness, meditation, and deep breathing exercises. I also made time for self-care, whether it was reading a book, taking a walk, or simply enjoying a relaxing bath. As I continued on my journey, I realized that the haters and naysayers were actually doing me a favor. They were pushing me to work harder, to believe in myself even more, and to stay focused on my goals. And for that, I'll always be grateful. But little did I know, the real secret to my success was yet to come. I was about to discover the power of having a supportive community, a tribe of like-minded individuals who would propel me to heights I never thought possible. And that's when the magic really happened. As I navigated the twists and turns of my journey to becoming a millionaire, I began to realize that the key to success lay not just in the actions I took, but in the way I thought. My mindset was the foundation upon which my entire fortune would be built, and I knew that I had to make some serious changes if I was going to achieve my goal. People often talk about the power of positive thinking, but I'm here to tell you that it's so much more than just that. It's about cultivating a mindset that's focused, driven, and unapologetic. A mindset that says, I'm going to do whatever it takes to succeed, and I'm not going to let anyone or anything get in my way. For me, this meant making a conscious effort to shift my focus away from negative thoughts and towards positive, empowering ones. I started practicing visualization techniques, where I'd close my eyes and vividly imagine myself achieving my goals. I could see myself succeeding, feeling the rush of excitement and pride that came with it. I also started using affirmations to reprogram my mind with positive, wealth-attracting thoughts. I'd repeat phrases like, "I am worthy of abundance and success," or "I trust myself to make smart financial decisions." At first, it felt silly, but the more I did it, the more I started to notice a shift in my thinking. But it wasn't just about what I thought. It was also about the tools I used to help me cultivate a millionaire mindset. I started reading books by successful entrepreneurs and investors, learning from their experiences and strategies. I joined online communities and forums, where I could connect with like-minded individuals who shared my passions and goals. And then there were the physical tools, the planners, journals, and apps that helped me stay focused and organized. I became obsessed with tracking my progress, monitoring my finances, and setting new goals for myself. It was exhilarating, and it gave me a sense of control over my destiny. As I looked in the mirror, I could see the changes taking place within me. I stood a little taller, smiled a little brighter, and radiated a confidence that I'd never experienced before. I knew that I was on the right path, and that nothing could stop me from achieving my dreams. But little did I know my wealth was about to increase exponentially, and with it, the stakes would rise. The pressure to perform would be greater than ever, and I'd have to confront the darker side of success. Would I be able to handle it, or would I crumble under the weight of my own ambition? The journey was just getting started, and I was about to find out. I still remember the day my bank account hit 6 figures. It was as if the entire world had finally recognized my worth, and I felt an overwhelming sense of validation. But as I basked in the glory of my success, I couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to life than just accumulating wealth. I began to feel restless, like I was stuck in a rut and needed to break free. That's when I started taking calculated risks to further my wealth. I invested in stocks, real estate, and even started my own business. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once, but I knew that I had to push myself to the limit if I wanted to truly achieve greatness. Of course, not all of my endeavors were successful. I faced setbacks and failures along the way, but I refused to let them discourage me. Instead, I chose to learn from my mistakes and use them as an opportunity to grow. I realized that failure wasn't the opposite of success, but rather a stepping stone to it. As I continued on my journey, I began to draw inspiration from mentors and role models who had achieved greatness in their own lives. I read their books, attended their seminars, and even sought out their counsel. One of my mentors, a successful entrepreneur, once told me that the key to success was to always be willing to take risks. "The greatest rewards often lie just outside of our comfort zones," he said. I took his words to heart and continued to push myself to new heights. And it was then that I faced a major decision that could impact my financial future. Should I invest in a lucrative but high-risk venture, or play it safe and stick with what I knew? The choice was far from clear, and I knew that whatever I decided, there would be no turning back. The fate of my financial future hung in the balance, and I was the only one who could determine its course. I still remember the day I woke up to a barrage of notifications on my phone. Overnight, my social media following had blown up, and my inbox was flooded with messages from people all over the world. The Millionaire Fat method had gone viral, and I was suddenly the center of attention. As I scrolled through my feeds, I saw that my success story had been picked up by major media outlets and social media platforms. People were both fascinated and outraged by my unconventional approach to getting rich. Some hailed me as a genius, while others called me a scam artist. The controversy only fueled the fire, and my name was on everyone's lips. At first, I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of attention. I had never been one for the spotlight, and the constant scrutiny was unnerving. But as I began to navigate the challenges of fame, I realized that this was an opportunity to spread my message to a wider audience. I started doing interviews and podcasts, sharing my story with anyone who would listen. However, with fame comes the pressure to maintain a certain image. I was constantly being asked to promote products or services that didn't align with my values. People wanted me to endorse get-rich-quick schemes or pose for photo shoots that would compromise my integrity. I had to stay vigilant and remind myself why I started this journey in the first place. Throughout the chaos, I kept coming back to one concept: authenticity. I knew that I couldn't compromise on my values, no matter how tempting the offer. If I was going to be a role model, I needed to stay true to myself and my message. It wasn't easy, but I knew that it was worth it. Just as I thought things were settling down, I received an email that would change everything. A prominent businessperson wanted to meet with me to discuss a potential partnership. They were offering a lucrative deal that would catapult my brand to the next level. But as I read through the proposal, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was time to put my commitment to the Millionaire Fat method to the test. Would I sell out or stick to my principles? The decision would change the course of my life forever. I never thought I'd say this, but becoming a millionaire wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. As my bank account grew, so did the number of people trying to take advantage of me. It was like I had a big target on my back, and every opportunist and con artist came out of the woodwork to take a shot. At first, it was just a few emails and messages from people claiming to have a business opportunity that would make me even richer. But as my popularity soared, so did the number of scammers and schemers trying to get a piece of my pie. I started to feel like I was living in a constant state of paranoia, always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I remember one guy who showed up at my office, claiming to be a financial advisor with a foolproof investment strategy. He had all the right credentials, all the right connections, and a charm that could sell ice to an Eskimo. But something about him didn't sit right with me. I did some digging, and it turned out he was running a Ponzi scheme, using his charm to swindle people out of their life savings. It was then that I realized I needed to take drastic measures to protect myself and my wealth. I hired a team of advisors, lawyers, and accountants to help me navigate the complex world of high finance. I set up trusts and foundations to shield my assets from predators. And I became extremely selective about who I did business with, always doing my due diligence before signing on the dotted line. But even with all these precautions in place, I still had to deal with the emotional toll of being a target. The constant scrutiny, the endless requests for money, the fake friendships and solicitations. It all took a toll on my mental health. I started to feel like I was living in a bubble, isolated from the real world and unable to trust anyone. It was then that I realized that success isn't just about making money. It's about building a life that's true to who you are. And that's what I had to confront next, my own demons and vulnerabilities. The question was I ready to face them head-on? I still remember the feeling of being so close to achieving my goal, yet so far away at the same time. The final hurdle was within sight, and I knew that if I could just push past this one last challenge, I would finally reach the wealth and happiness I had been striving for. But as I stood at the threshold, I couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty and doubt that had been building inside me. It was a cold, gray day, and the clouds seemed to be closing in around me. I felt trapped, like I was stuck in a prison of my own making. I had overcome so many obstacles, but this last one seemed insurmountable. What if I failed? What if I didn't have what it took to succeed? The fears and doubts that had been lingering in the back of my mind for so long came flooding to the surface, threatening to engulf me. I knew I needed a plan to overcome these fears and doubts, to push past this final hurdle and achieve ultimate success. So I took a deep breath and sat down to reflect on my journey so far. I thought about all the times I had faced adversity and come out on top. I thought about the people who had supported me along the way. And I thought about the lessons I had learned, the insights I had gained into the workings of my own mind and heart. As I looked within, I realized that my greatest fear was not failure, but success. I was afraid of what would happen if I achieved my goal, of what would be expected of me. I was afraid of losing the sense of purpose that had driven me for so long. But as I acknowledged this fear, I also saw that it was holding me back. It was keeping me from taking the final step towards true wealth and happiness. With this newfound awareness, I was able to develop a plan to overcome my fears and doubts. I broke down the task into smaller, manageable steps. I sought out guidance from trusted advisors. And I reminded myself of why I had started this journey in the first place, to create a better life for myself and those I loved. As I stood up to face the final hurdle, I felt a sense of determination and purpose. I knew that it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to push through. I was ready to take the leap of faith and see where it would take me. The outcome was far from certain, but one thing was clear: I would never be the same again. The question was, what would I become? As I look back on my journey, I'm filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. Becoming a millionaire wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Not just for the financial security, but for the lessons I learned along the way. I've come to realize that true wealth isn't just about accumulating riches. It's about leaving a lasting legacy that will outlive me. I've always believed that success is not just about achieving my own goals, but about helping others achieve theirs. Now that I've reached this milestone, I feel a sense of responsibility to give back to my community. I've been fortunate enough to have had the opportunities I've had, and I want to create opportunities for others. I've started working on a foundation that will provide scholarships and mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs. I want to help them avoid the mistakes I made early on and give them the tools they need to succeed. It's not just about writing a check. It's about being actively involved in their journey and offering guidance whenever I can. I've also been thinking about writing a book about my experiences. I want to share my story with a wider audience in the hopes that it will inspire others to take control of their own finances. I believe that everyone deserves to live a life of financial freedom, and I want to help them get there. As I look to the future, I'm excited about the possibilities. I know that there will be challenges ahead, but I'm ready for them. I've learned to be resilient, to adapt to changing circumstances, and to stay focused on my goals. To those who are just starting out on their own journey, I want to offer a message of hope and inspiration. Becoming a millionaire may seem like an impossible dream, but it's not. It takes hard work, determination, and a willingness to take risks. But if I can do it, anyone can. Don't be discouraged by setbacks or failures. They are an inevitable part of the journey. Instead, use them as opportunities to learn and grow. Surround yourself with people who support and encourage you. And always stay true to your values and your vision. As I close this chapter of my life, I'm filled with a sense of gratitude and anticipation. I'm grateful for the journey that has brought me to where I am today, and I'm excited about the journey that lies ahead. I hope that my story will inspire others to take control of their own finances and create the life they've always wanted.